Hello, this is Expanding the Zone. I'm Shane Combs here with my brother Matt. I'd like to welcome you, however you may be watching us out on SBC Sports Zone on YouTube or maybe listening on your podcast app. We're out there just about anywhere you get your podcast on a weekly basis. Appreciate you joining us here. We're in the middle of season 3. This is our third show and our 42nd show overall. And Matt, as I welcome you to the show, I know we always want to give a shout out to Dr. Chris Good and the support that he gives our local athletes on our YouTube channel. And obviously you and I put this Expanding the Zone out there as well, just as, just something that we hope that coaches, educators, business leaders, anyone in the leadership, we hope they get something out of it each and every week. And, we always try to tie it to something that's current. And I guess as I welcome you to the show, I'll just kind of brainstorm out loud here. I guess where I was wanting to go this week, this is that time of year where we're putting together our staff. We're in schools, we're hiring teachers, maybe hiring principals, maybe hiring athletic directors. You get into a situation where, head coaches are maybe trying to put their staff together. You get into some summer activities and coaches are trying to keep their teams together and so forth. And there's just a lot of different things that go on. And, the Golden State Championship and the dynasty and some different things, those are to be some of my notes and things that make for great core leadership and great core results. So all of these things kind of came together. And I'll be honest, man, I don't even have a real fancy title for you the way we do sometimes in these things. That's just kind of where my mind's going this week. And I just wanted to throw that out to you here in an introduction and kind of see when you hear me say some of those things in terms of a bullet point, just to kind of get the show notes going. What say you in terms of where we can go with this topic tonight?
Yeah, when you had mentioned this topic to me, Shane, originally, a lot of things came to mind in the world of sports, and then, like you said, in the world we live in every day, you and I, in terms of being an educator or being in administration. We've always had, like in the world of sports, free agency, right? So people move around, people change teams, and a lot of times those great teams, like you mentioned with the word dynasty, whether people start throwing that around with Golden State, but I mean, there's been other teams over the years. Obviously, those teams tend to keep their people together for a longer period of time, right? And or at least keep the core group of people together, and then add the pieces necessary. You've got this thing going on right now in the world of professional golf with the LIV tour, where golfers are leaving the PGA tour to go play in another part of the country for various reasons we can discuss, later on, but money, time, less commitment, things like that. And I think it got both of us thinking as we kick this topic around of, in our world, what can we do as leaders to try to keep our people, keep people engaged, keep our core people together, while understanding that everybody's a free agent, right? Everybody can go to a different position to whatever's better for their family. And that's not always a sign of poor leadership when that happens. Some people just leave and for a better opportunity or whatever. But how as leaders can we try to maximize, keeping our people together, minimize that turnover? I think that's the one thing, Shane, right now. I was talking to a principal the other day, and he said to me, in his career, he can never remember having to hire this many people over a summer, or especially he said everybody's in that boat. He'll talk to other friends of his that are principals or superintendents, same thing. They're hiring a lot of people this summer. It just seems to be, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it seems to be a lot of openings, a lot of jobs that need filled. And I think all these things together just got us thinking about, could we talk a little bit about what are some things maybe we can do to try to keep good people in our organizations?
Yeah, I think when you were talking there, I was looking at my notes and trying to compare a little bit, and I think some things that you said that jumped out at me in terms of there's sometimes people, it's just time for them to move on. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
times where maybe they're given a great opportunity that's going to be better for them. Sometimes it might be a job or a role or a status. It could be a money thing. It could be a situation. Um, but there's certainly times where it has nothing to do with the leadership that they're leaving. It just has to do with terms of where they're moving to is a better fit for them. I think when you look from in an education standpoint from the top, from like say superintendent and principal, and then the principal trying to put together a staff. I think we're in a time of more specialization. I know 20 years ago when I started, I was a 1-8, so to speak, on the certificate, where the state of Ohio thought I was talented enough to teach music, you know what I'm saying, or art,
Yeah.
or every subject area. In fact, my first couple of years of teaching, I did teach all the different subjects. As time went on, teachers that then came into the profession started to narrow a little bit. Okay, you're only allowed to teach 4 through 9 now. You can only teach these particular subjects. So that becomes a little trickier. I've interviewed some outstanding teacher candidates, but they may not have the certification in terms of what we need in the hole that we're trying to fill. Um, I think it's true for head coaches. I think sometimes, Matt, head coaches, if you're a successful program and you have some people, a lot of times you have head coaches and they have junior high coaches or JV coaches. Their goal is to someday be a varsity coach. Maybe you do get lucky and you have that lifer. I mean, you think like of our dad. I mean, like at
Right.
Uniota there for as long as he invested in terms of at Uniota. What was it, 20 years in the junior high level? Um,
Right.
but my point is, there's different factors that different people. And then I would even go a step further now to where even at the high school level, trying to sell it or keep the group of your players together. It doesn't seem as much of a guarantee just because that kid plays as a freshman that he or she's going to play as a sophomore, that he or she's going to be as a junior or senior. You're kind of trying to bring the parents along, so forth. There's just so many different options out there that you're constantly, as a leader, trying to sell your vision, sell your product, and bring these people along. And I want to go 2 or 3 different angles with that, but I at least want to throw it back to you there in terms of, does that sound like we're matching up early on in terms of what it is we're talking about this week, in terms of the topic, and in terms of the angle on the education side of it, at least, that would apply best to us in terms of these teams, so to speak, having leaders, but then obviously having people that are working together for a common goal. And there's going to be a lot of interchanging parts there. And obviously when you have staff turnover and you have different things, that certainly causes something that, if not done correctly, can cause some problems.
Yeah, I think when you run, if you run a successful organization as a leader, there you're bound to have people grow, within your organization. And when they grow, let's face it, sometimes they want to move up in the world, so to speak. They want promotion, or they want to take some of those skills they've learned and go on to bigger and better things. And let's be honest, if that promotion's not available within your own organization, sometimes people look outside, right? So as a coach, if you've got a freshman coach that wants to be a varsity coach, you know, and there's no varsity coaching vacancy within the organization, that person looks somewhere and finds a job and moves on. To me, that's not a poor reflection on the head coach. In fact, that's probably a positive reflection on the head coach, that he has trained or helped train somebody to take that next step and be a head coach, right? Same way in your school. Sometimes a teacher goes and gets an administrative license, wants to become a principal. Same thing. I think, to me, when someone moves onward and upward, um, that shines a positive light on the organization they've been a part of. But let's be honest, it still leaves a hole, right? That person has to be replaced. And as a leader, you're losing a quality person within your organization, and now you're trying to find somebody to replace them. And to me, that causes or certainly presents, I should say, a challenge. And I guess what it comes down to for me, Shane, and I don't know which way you want to go with it first, but what it comes down to for me is, when people leave your organization, or why are they leaving? I think that's what it comes down to for me. I mean, if they're leaving for a better opportunity, if they're leaving because it's better for their family, um, if reasons like that, if they're leaving for a promotion that you can't offer them, to me, that would not concern me as a leader. What would concern me is if people were leaving because they are really miserable within your organization. They feel underutilized. They feel underappreciated. Reasons like that. Because then I think, as a leader, you have to look and say, do we have a problem here that's going to snowball, and in turn, we're going to lose more people year after year after year and have more turnover. So if that makes sense, I guess that's what I would look at is why. I think the question is why, when people leave, are they leaving?
Well, I think that's really interesting. And I think the other misconception is sometimes that, you know, the entire group, the entire team, entire organization or whatever may stick together. A lot of times when we say there's not a lot of turnover, it could be something as simple as at the top, right? It could be, let's just use a high school sports program, for example. It could just be the head coach. It could be athletic director. Because what's weird about this, Matt, is take like you mentioned the Golden State Warriors before. Like if I think of in my lifetime, I think we throw that word dynasty around sometimes a little loose, but if I try to think of who's been the best, and maybe think out loud with me here and help me here a little bit. I mean, obviously this Golden State team just won their fourth in 8 years. That certainly starts to get there. Ownership, Steve Kerr, Curry, Thompson, Green. Pretty consistent core, right? Obviously threw in a piece like Durant, but even then, the core group being able to even adjust and understand his value and where he fits in the puzzle. Obviously, the Bulls, that Bulls team changed drastically, but the consistent ownership, Phil Jackson, Jordan Pippen, right? I think you'd be hard pressed to say in football the Patriots haven't been the standard. Is that fair? Head coach, ownership, quarterback, and as you go through, but now what's the difference? Like when you look at like a college level, Alabama, we talked about this on a previous show, Alabama here recently, head coach, the players change, come all the way down to like, you obviously had an amazing run the last 20 years at Benton County. In 20 years, the most a player ever played for you was 4 years. But the consistency at the head coach, the consistency in terms of the people supporting you, you had a long time core group in your little league program, correct? In terms of the feeder system and so
Yes.
forth. And I know you'd be the first to praise them because you always were. But like my point is that there can be some turnover, but there has to be that core group. So when you say, why are we losing people? Are we losing people because our vision's poor, because they didn't believe in what we were doing? Or like you said, are we losing people that, man, daggone it, I can't pay them that. I can't offer them that position. I want to see them promote. And so as I listen to you talk a little bit, I think that's what I look at. I look to the core of the foundation, and there's certain things. I'll throw this here, and I don't mean to just go all over the place. That's kind of how my notes are on this show. Take Golden State, for example, since it's so current. Curry and Thompson, those are two people that grew up the sons of an NBA players, right? So when they went to, what was it for Thompson? Help me out here. Washington State, is that correct?
Yes.
And Davidson, yeah, it's not like they were looking to get their first NBA contract to buy mom and dad a home. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously, there's a lot of people when you get that type of gift of becoming a professional athlete, you have people you want to take care of. So yeah, you could argue that they had a little bit more in place for them to allow them to maybe take the less money and to do the different things to go. My point is, I don't talk down to another athlete that maybe wanted to get his contract or wanted to get a little bit more money or some different things that maybe break a team up or make it difficult to put people in play. Does that make sense? Like, so
Right.
if you bring that down to the high school level, there sometimes there's just certain factors where, hey, you're lucky enough to have people in place. Like using my Benton County analogy a second ago, you were lucky enough to have people in place. They didn't want to leave Benton County. Benton County was their life. You know what I mean? They donate. They basically had given their life to the Benton County community. So you had some people in place where you weren't going to have a lot of turnover in those areas. Where you did have some other coaches I know that some really good coaches on your staff that they had come in and offered some things, but then they went back to their home schools or they went back. Their family might have changed or whatnot. Is that fair in terms of just comparing it maybe a little bit to your personal success when I use some of those analogies?
Well, I think what jumps out at me as you talk, Shane, again, and so many topics we have on this show, it comes down to this. It starts with the leadership at the top. Whatever your organization is, it sort of starts with that leadership, because as you get consistent leadership, whether it be in sports, if you have consistency in your coach, your head coach. Maybe you have a head coach for a long period of time, right? And he keeps the staff together for a long period of time. Those things help build a program. If it comes down to a school, are you changing principals every other year, or do you have some consistency in your administration? Because if there's consistency in your administration, there's probably a plan, right? I mean, there's a plan that you're following. And even if that plan isn't perfect, it's better than no plan at all, or it's better than having to change the plan year in, year out. So what happens when you have consistency at the top, at the leadership level, it tends to filter down, I think, to more of a consistent approach throughout the organization. I think that again, when we go back, and again, we go back to why people sort of move on from an organization. When you started talking about some of those really successful teams, and you look at why some of the role players or some of the people around the core were changed, right? There was change there. Think about some of the reasons why. Some of those guys, like you said, were able to be promoted with a more of a bigger contract in another situation or in another city. And I think these organizations understand that and say, hey, good for you. You're going to move on, and we've got a plan in place to try to replace you, so that both sides are happy, right? One person gets the promotion, makes more money, but yet your organization continues to be successful because you've had a plan in place to replace that person. Um, the other things that happen is just simply in sports, people get older, right? They can't perform as well, they're replaced. Well, what in education, that probably means people get older and retire. Again, nothing wrong with retirement. You've worked, you earned it over the course of your career. You're ready to move on and travel and just enjoy life after your career, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And if you're a quality leader at a school level, aren't you planning for that? That shouldn't blindside you. Hey, wait a minute here. We've got 5 or 6 staff members in our district that could retire next year. We better be ready for that. We better be thinking ahead, right, as to who may replace them. So those things I don't think are the issues. So I feel like right now, let me ask you this question, because let's just jump right into this part of it, Shane. We're in a society now where, for whatever reason, there's a lot of jobs unfilled. Would you agree with that? I mean, like, you drive down whatever street in your town and tell me how many help wanted signs are up on every restaurant, or hey, we're hiring, and so it's not just in education, or it's not just in it's everywhere. But from the people I've talked to this year, I mean, from my own personal view, and then the other principals I've talked to, there does seem to be a lot of empty spots that we're trying to fill right now in schools. And I don't think any school, I'm sure there's a few schools that are lucky enough to have avoided this, but it seems like most schools are. I mean, I was in a meeting the other day, and it's like somebody says, well, we're trying to hire an athletic director. We're trying to hire a band director. We're trying to hire 2 math teachers, 2 intervention specialists. And these are different schools throughout our area. I mean, it's not just, one. Do you think it's just a sign of the times right now for us and as a society that for whatever reason we have some jobs, that aren't being filled, or is it some of these other things that are causing this, because we've talked about some of the acceptable reasons people move on or whatever, but let's dig into some of these things that could be problems for organizations. Is it morale? Is it money? Is it appreciation? Is it my skill set's not being used correctly? Is it too much of a time commitment for my family? I mean, like, what are, why are some of these reasons people are leaving? Like when you you used an example in the world of sports with the Warriors, right? Let me use the example of professional golf right now with this LIV tour. I'd mentioned this earlier. It's been pretty interesting to me to look at this and read about it and listen to people talk about it. But for those that don't know, there's this tour that's starting, that's basically sponsored. It's a Saudi Arabian tour. And it's played overseas, mostly in Great Britain area or whatever. But the events are played over there, and basically what it is they've offered a lot of PGA touring professionals a great deal of money to come over there and play in this tour. And I'm talking, like, for some of those guys, generational money to come play in this. And they've designed it in a way where it attacks some of maybe the weaknesses of the PGA Tour over the years, or some of the complaints the players have had with the PGA Tour. So I know I'm giving a long-winded thing here, but follow me on this, because I think it goes into what we want to talk about, some of these different topics. But, like, one, the money, right? They're offering way more money than the PGA Tour's ever paid their players. Now, I know, to people like you and me, when we say, hey, Phil Mickelson's career earnings are $95 million, we're like, wow, who couldn't be happy with that, right? I mean, but Phil Mickelson's easily a top 10 player all time in his sport, in the history of the game. You cannot even make an argument, really, he's not a top 10 player. In my mind, he's probably 6 or 7 all time. So he's made $95 million. Can you imagine what a top 10 player all time in the NFL's made, or top 10 player all time in Major League Baseball's made? I mean, Aaron Rodgers just signed a 4-year, $136 million contract or something. So in 4 years, he's set to make considerably more money than Phil Mickelson's made in a 30-year career playing golf. So in those guys' minds, hey, we've been undercompensated. I've got an opportunity at the end of my career to be guaranteed $100 million to go play over here. I'm going to take advantage of that. So there's money. My point is, that's one, right? There's money involved in every line of work. There's time. On this golf tour, it's 3-day events with shotgun starts. So you're not playing, you're not getting up at 7 o'clock for a tee time one day and 3 for the other. You're in and out in 3 days. You're gone. There's no cut. If you show up to an event and you have the worst round in your life and get last place, you're still leaving with some money. So time, money, all those things go into these decisions. Do you think we run into some of that in the normal workforce, like outside of professional sports, where, wait a minute here, I'm to a point in my career where I want to make more money. I'm to a point in my career where my time matters a little bit more to me, and I feel like, maybe I'm being taken advantage of that way in my current position, and I can move to another position and maybe be appreciated a little bit more, or, put myself in a job that just doesn't demand as much time, maybe. I know that's a lot. I'm throwing a lot at you, but I feel like those are some of the reasons we're getting turnovers. Maybe it's morale, maybe it's appreciation. I don't know. Have you seen any of these things, or do you think any of these things even play into it?
Well, as you were talking, I thought that was a great golf analogy in terms of what we're talking about. I mean, for some of our sports fans that are listening, that's obviously, even if you're not really a big time golf fan, that's certainly been a big sports story here of late. I was taking some notes as you were talking here and comparing them to my notes. I have 3 things that I have bullet points here on. And I think as I get into the second, third one, I'll throw it back to you, and I'll almost ask you to compare it to your analogy there, maybe even play the role of PGA leadership, or how you would go about maybe adjusting as a leader. Number one, I love what you said about playing. Like, if you take a basketball example, if we could sit here and do a show, Matt, if we were a basketball podcast, and we could argue if the flex offense or the shuffle offense or the motion offense was the best offense. But what I do know is you're going to be better off having all five people run flex than you are to take, an offensive possession where three people are trying to run motion and two are running flex, right? We could argue about man or zone, but what I do know for sure what doesn't work is if three people decide to play man on every possession and two just try to play zone, that doesn't work very well, right? It's a common plan on getting everybody to do it the right way. The common plan, even if not the best fit, could sometimes be better. Well, then the second thing, you started to talk about options. Well, if you study sports, to stay with the sports analogy, over time, I don't know if the big red machine was any more loyal than the modern day athletes. I don't know that they had the options. You know what I'm saying? Like, could you realistically keep those 8 guys together now and that pitching staff together now, or would they just have so many more options that with that many future Hall of Famers that like you said, so and so would get to go, hey, instead of being the 5th best player on this team, I can go be the best player on this team and get this contract. Free agencies change, player control. Think about how much more control LeBron James has year to year, the last 10 years of his career here, than say Reggie Miller did. Does that make sense? Like, and maybe Reggie Miller's not a great comparison because you're talking about like an all-time great compared to just a solid Hall of Fame player. But you get my drift, right? In terms of generation. So the free agencies change, transfer portal in college. The college athlete has far more control over his or her choices now than they did, 3 years ago, not alone 15, 20 years ago. And then all the way down to the high school level, the open enrollment and the different things compared to just when we were in high school to when we started coaching till now. So options and choices. And I think that's happened a little bit in the career opportunities too. It's just a lot easier to move job to job because, again, as you said, they're open. If you can match up your certification and you can match up the years and the money you're making and the different things, it's probably easier to move. It used to be a scary thing as a teacher. Like once you're at a school, man, I hate to lose that tenure. I hate to try to move in here, and here. So I think the options. Well, then you mentioned morale. So I want to tie this to morale as my third point. If I were to blame my profession for something that we haven't been very good at here in the last, and maybe I just was blind to it or deaf to it early in my career. Maybe I just recognize it more late in the career. Maybe this has been going on far longer than now, but I've really noticed it more in the last 5 to 10 years. I don't think we do a very good job of promoting our profession. Like, if I was just going to talk education to someone out there listening right now, coming through college or just getting into to an age where they're starting to start a career, education's a pretty good gig. I mean, it's a situation where you get your summers off, get your evenings off, get your weekends off, your holidays off. Great family career, right? You opportunity to be with your family and so forth. A chance to work with a variety of people, work with kids, work with adults, and I just feel like I hear so many educators say, "Oh, this is terrible. I wouldn't do this, or this," and I'm thinking to myself, like, you're going to have to help me understand what's so bad about our profession here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we have to have more of a voice and more of a positive approach to our profession. And I would challenge coaches on this. I would challenge, if you're miserable going to June shootouts as a basketball coach, well, you probably shouldn't be a basketball coach. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't want to do winter hitting, you probably shouldn't be a baseball or softball coach. You know what I mean? If you're just miserable doing it, you see what I'm saying? It's one of those things of like having the positive morale and being a little bit more of an ambassador for your profession. In terms of the business place, it's the same way. So when I think of having a plan and then all the options that people have and me having a little bit more positive approach, I guess that's what I got out of what you were saying. I guess I would throw it back to you. And I don't care if you want to go to the golf analogy again. So if you are the leader of the PGA, or if you are the leader of someone who, for lack of a better term, coming under attack or being challenged, maybe attack's not the right word, but like you're coming under challenge by other options that never existed. You know what I'm saying? Like the PGA never had to worry about this. Now all of a sudden, for the longest time, ESPN was the standard. Well, now you can go get your sports information from a lot of other places, right? So ESPN kind of had to change. You get what I'm saying? So like, how would you as a leader suggest the PGA or suggest those people in leadership, respond to this type of plan, options, morale, all these challenges that they're being faced with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the morale thing you talked about is interesting to me. I agree with you on the fact that I think when you get into a profession, let's say you become a teacher, and if you are miserable at your job, and the reason, for whatever reasons, but if especially if those reasons are tied into like, just everyday responsibilities that you should have known getting into that you were going to be responsible for, then you've obviously made a wrong choice in career path. Because like if you get into education, you say, the kids are driving me nuts. Well, you kind of knew you were going to work with kids getting into education, right? I mean, my point is, there's certain things that you have to come to expect. Now, I do think that where I would take what you said, where I'd push back a little bit, maybe, and I don't even think you meant to, I don't think you don't agree with this necessarily, but you were talking more of almost like the employee being responsible for their own morale, their own joy, right? I do think leaders have to take some responsibility in that too, and promoting a positive morale within their staff, whether it be a principal with his teaching staff, a coach with his assistant coaches and players. There has to be some responsibility for morale that falls on that leader too, because I do think we'll stick with the education thing, because you said, just to use our line of work as an example. I think over the years we have put less effort as leaders into morale than we did when I first started teaching, 25 years ago, because it seemed like when I got into it, and I don't know if you and I got into it about the same time, so I'll see if you agree with this, but when we got into it, there was that relationship piece was really, there was more to that. Like principals wanted teachers to have a bond with their kids, to have a relationship with their kids. I felt like school administration wanted teachers to have a bond with each other. I like when I first started, I can remember my first two jobs at two different schools, and albeit these were smaller schools, right, than what I ended up at, over the last 2 decades. But there was a ton of teacher collaboration. I mean, one of my schools I taught at actually had it built into the day where we had an individual planning period and we had a team planning period where we met with other staff members. Okay. It was built into every day, every single day. At the other school I was at, we had several opportunities where the staff had to get together to collaborate, to talk about how we were going to handle certain students. And quite honestly, over the last decade or so, I've had very little opportunity to collaborate with staff. Matter of fact, I made a comment to a friend of mine one time, like, oh, one of the teachers' names came up, and I said, you know what? I have not seen her. I don't know if I've seen her this school year. I mean, I'd went almost an entire school year, and I honestly didn't think that I'd even ran into this particular lady in the hallway. And my point is, have we gotten to a point where we're so locked in on test scores and being efficient and jumping through all these hoops we have to jump through, that we've sort of forgotten about that relationship piece that I think is tied to morale? Because if the relationships aren't there, you tend to feel disconnected, I think is the word I would use. You just tend to feel, as a teacher, I show up here every day, I do my job, I get paid, and I go home. And I don't know about you, Shayne, but when I got into education, I wanted more than that. I didn't want to just show up every day and get a paycheck. I could have gotten any line of work just to get a paycheck. I looked at education as an opportunity. Of course, with you and I both, we wanted the coaching piece too. But again, why did we want to do that? Because we enjoyed the relationships with people, right? That coaching provides. So I feel like sometimes when our leadership, when as leaders, we don't make people feel appreciated. Okay. And I don't mean that you should have to go up to somebody every single day and give them a hug. Okay. It's just, let's just be realistic. But when we don't make people feel appreciated, and we don't help our staff, whether it be coach, principal, whatever, when we don't help them feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves, I think we miss. I think we miss something. And I think that's also what causes people to say, you know what, I don't feel like I'm a part of this, and maybe I need a fresh start somewhere else. And then that causes some of that turnover.
Well, I think it goes to the last point I have in my notes here. Expectations can hold everything together as well. I think if you're going about it for the wrong reasons, if you're motivated for the wrong reasons, I think that's where burnout, I think that's where morale, I think that's where some of those things can take place. You know, the best coaches that I've ever been around, the best teachers that I've ever been around, it's not about a test score. It's not about a number of wins. It's not about, they're all competitive. They love that. They love those things. They love winning. They love being successful. But it's more about, it becomes the byproduct of who they are, what they do. It's a situation of, it's the teacher of, hey, I'm on time. I prepared. I go up and beyond. I work with my kids. I try to follow my kids. I do this. I do that. Same way in coaching. I'm prepared. I work hard. I have relationships with my kids. Our coaches, we're close. We work together. And then as a result, because you go about your job and do it that way every day, a lot of that other stuff happens as the byproduct, right? It doesn't mean that it's wrong to have expectations and to want to be successful. But it's funny how, as you were talking, I was thinking in my career, it's become full circle in terms of how, we when we first started, it was about the whole child, right? We want to really have the relationship piece. We want to work all this. And then we have fallen into, for the longest time, this cycle of it's almost like they're a piece of data, right?
Yeah. They really are.
Hey, TBT, I need that data piece. Bring it on in here, and it's like we don't even have their name attached to it. It's like they're student 54. You know what I mean? Like it's. I will say this: I've seen a little bit of a trend of it starting to go back, and maybe it's a sign of me being older, or maybe it's just we're really seeing a full cycle of how it started as one thing and went to another, and it's starting to cycle back. And perhaps, as like so many things we talk about here on Expanding the Zone, the right answer is probably a mixture of both, right? Do I think that I really, really improved as a teacher when I started to understand curriculum and assessment and how to read data and how to use data to drive instruction? Absolutely. I strongly believe in assessment and instruction and data driving the instruction. But I also understand that I better understand each and every student that walks in my classroom. I better understand each and every student athlete that comes into my practice or into my program. And I've got to get to know them. I got to get to know their family. I got to get to know how to motivate them, what makes them go. And I've got to have not just them, but their entire family buy into what I'm trying to do to be successful. So I think those expectations can really start to hold things together too, in terms of giving. Because here's the thing, Matt. Like when I go back to options, like I've known some people, they'll play for 3 AAU teams in 3 years. I've had some people, they'll leave what from afar looks to be a pretty good situation just for a short-term fix that in the long run ended up not even being better than what they left in the first place. You know what I mean? But again, now, do they have the right to do that? Yes. But it kind of goes back to, sometimes as a leader, you're going to do all the things the right way, and people are going to make choices for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like in 20 years, because I know this happened to me, in 20 years, you may lose a basketball player because there's an issue in the football program, or I may lose a girls basketball player because there's a problem in the volleyball program, or the other way around. You know what I mean? I may, I may, we may have some staff leave Paint Valley because such and such school can offer them a promotion or more money or whatever. So all of those things we've talked about throughout the show are things that you have to know. But I think it goes back to the core. If the core is the same and the plan is consistent, and you continue to try to hire and get buy-in, the foundation of anything you build, right, is the key. Would you agree? Like the foundation is what's going to keep it from falling completely apart. You may have to start back over. You may have to rebuild a little bit, but it's never going to come crashing down as long as you have that consistent foundation that allows everything to build on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think too, as a leader, you lose, like you said, you lose people sometimes, even when you try to do things right. I mean, as a coach, you may have a player transfer just because he doesn't agree with your philosophy or he thinks he should be playing more, right? And you've evaluated him and you think he's in the right role, and he ends up saying, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. There's not much you can do if you've tried to do everything right. Now, with that role that you've asked that player to have, especially if you've taken the time to show him some appreciation and say, hey, listen, this isn't the role you want. I get it. This is the role I need you to play. We still feel like you're a big part of this team. We still appreciate you. If you treat kids right and you have a relationship, and then they end up transferring or whatever, then there's nothing you can do about that. And that doesn't mean you're a bad leader. I think that just happens from time to time. Like you said, people leave to take a promotion because as a leader, I think you have to ask yourself, Shane, what can you control? Right? We always tell players, you've heard this a million times, like, what can you control? You can control your effort and your attitude, right? Things that you can control no matter how the game's going or how things are going. Well, as a leader, it's kind of the same way. If you're a principal, you can't control how much money your language arts teachers make compared to the school district down the road. That's outside of your, that's above your head. You don't control that. That's a part of your contract. So what can you control to keep that person in your school? Well, can't you control how you make that person feel about their job every day, or what kind of environment you create as a leader for that person to come to work in? Okay, listen, I know I hate the fact that you make $8,000 less than what you can make by driving 15 minutes down the road, but I hope that you stay here because of what a great environment this is to work in every day. I hope that you really love coming into your classroom every day, and that person next door to you consider a friend. And I hope you know that we go out of our way to try to do everything we can do to let you know how much we appreciate you. Because I think there's things leaders can do, little carrots they can dangle, little pats on the back they can offer that go a long way, right? To maybe making up for some of those things as a leader you can't control. I guess that's my thing. If you're controlling what you can control and a person still leaves your organization for whatever reason, I think you just have to be okay with that. But I think that, like you said, you try to replace them with the best people possible and start all over again in those situations. But again, are you doing everything you can do to create a great organization to be a part of?
Well, I think that's good stuff. I think as we get into to kind of our final segment here and kind of recapping a little bit, I think the summary I come away from is create your own benefits. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those where I thought what you said there was really powerful at the end in terms of there's just certain things we just don't have a control for. I mean, there's times where I feel like we've given a staff member, or I feel like there's times we've given a coach, or there's times we've given players and their families anything and everything you could ever want, and they still went another direction. You know what I'm saying? And that's hard to handle sometimes. You know what I mean? As a leader, it's hard not to look yourself in the mirror and say, what I do wrong? But at the end of the day, I think what you're saying is very powerful. Is if you're going about it in a consistent way, and you're going about it the right way, where you're doing it for the right reasons, create your own benefit. A lot of times it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have gift and money sometimes to to let someone know they're appreciated, right? I don't have to
Right.
walk in your classroom and hand you a gift as much as, like you said, it's how I almost treat you day to day. You know, if I walk in your classroom the one or two times during teacher appreciation week and hand you a gift and say, "Hey, great job," and that's the only time you see me all year, that's generic. You know what I mean? But
Right.
like if it's a genuine every day in the heat of battle with you, and we're going about it the right way. That's kind of the catchphrase I would use is create your own benefit package. You know, as a leader, create your own benefits of what it means to be a part of your program, what it means to be a part of this staff, what it means to be a part of this school district. And I think that can apply to any level of leadership. So I guess, Matt, I would ask you, this has been a really neat show in terms of how we've been able to take it from so many different angles, and we've been able to take it all the way up to a professional or college level, all the way down into the high school or down into the business world, or it's so neat when we do these shows to see and understand how leadership's leadership. You know what I mean? Like no matter how big or small you look at it, so many of the leadership skills are the same. So I guess to create your own benefits through your effort and your actions is something that in my professional development I really take from this show. Maybe give me a final thought and I'll close this out here tonight.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said about creating your own benefits. I almost would say it like this too. Are you running an organization, whether you're a coach, principal, whatever, superintendent, whatever the case may be, are you running an organization that naturally attracts people to it? Okay. And is it the type of thing where you're running an organization where it's hard for people to walk away? It's hard for people to walk away. Like if somebody leaves for a better opportunity, there's still a part of that person that says, "Man, I'm going to miss this place." Because if you're running the right type of thing, I think you have that. And that doesn't mean people won't leave for a better opportunity. But I think that, are you creating a situation that really attracts people to it, and people want to be a part of it? If you think about the and people listening to this show could do the same thing right now. Just in your head, think about the best sports teams in your area, high school sports teams, whether it be so and so's football team or so and so's volleyball team, so and so's boys basketball team, whatever, and say to yourself, okay, seems to be the best team in this area every single year. And I guarantee you, if you look at those organizations, there's a lot of players and coaches within those programs that there's no place else they'd rather be. Even though the school down the road might have nicer facilities, might pay a little more money, might, whatever, but there's no place else I'd rather be than this place right here. And a lot of times that's because the leaders of that organization have created a culture that attract people to it. You know, not only do you not lose people, people want to join. You know what I'm saying? Like not only do you keep your own people, you've got people knocking on the door wanting to be a part of it. And that could be a team, or that could be a school, or that could be a corporate situation, or whatever, right? If you as a leader have created that situation, then I think then you've really done a great job. There's always going to be people move on. There's always going to be new faces come in, but to me, it's not real hard to spot those cultures and those situations that are top shelf. That people really want to be a part of. And I think, again, like you said, you create your own benefits, you create your own attraction, and like I said earlier, um, you like we were talking about earlier. I think you control what you can control, right? I mean, that's what you do as a leader. There's going to be some things out of your control, but you make sure you control what you can control, and I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, good stuff. I hope everybody gets something out of it. I know I sure did this week here on our third show here in season 3 of Expanding the Zone. This is our 42nd show overall. As always, thank you, Doctor Chris Good there of Good Health Chiropractic Center, for all the support on the YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on your podcast app, check us out on YouTube sometime. It's SVC Sports Zone YouTube channel. And as we get going into the fall, we'll have more and more of our high school coverage and some of the kids and some of the different things there. So, Matt, a lot of fun. We'll enjoy about a week off here. We'll be back at it midweek of next week with our 43rd overall show. I know we have 3 or 4 topics we've been dancing around and some different things in the sports world and leadership world. So I think we're in for a great second half here to our season number 3 here on Expanding the Zone. So on that note, we'll get on out of here and we'll see everybody next week. Thanks, everyone.